Okay, so the final thing we're going to look at in this video is the search box over here on the right hand side. So if we just zoom in, so as you can see here, we've got the search box and it's got this nice rounded rectangle around it, and it's got this nice little highlight here. So the first thing we're going to do, if we click on the text where it says search my website, you'll notice it jumps over here to the text. So we're going to turn that off. The other thing we're going to turn off, if we click on this, we're going to turn off the search field. Okay, so there's two slices that we need to create. The first slice is going to be the background of the search box, and the other slice is going to be this go button. So if we click on the background for the search box, it selects it down here on the right. So we're just going to move this down because we can't have a slice on top of a slice, otherwise we can't select it. So here's the background. So if we grab the slice tool, and then we're just going to put a slice around it, like that. And if we just zoom in just to refine the edges, so if we just bring this down so it's on top there, and then move this one so it's just by the grey line, and then bring the sides in like that, and then the final one, which is pretty good, that's fine by me. So if we double click on that, we're going to call this search BG. So the go button, we need to slice around that as well, so that looks quite good to me. And then if I just bring in this edge, you need to make sure that the slice on the left hand side is right up against the blue line, otherwise we'll have a gap when we put the search field next to it. So that looks good to me. I'm going to click on that one. I'm going to call this search go and click OK. Okay, so now we've created the two slices. We need to get make the background transparent. So if we just come all the way to the bottom and just click the eye next to the background, it's now made that transparent. So if we now go to the file, save for web and devices, so if we just move over to the right, you can see here's our background and here's our go button. So to select the two, if you hold down the shift key and click on the go one, it's now selected both of them. Make sure they're PNG, click on save. Now you need to select on these slices, it needs to be selected slices, and then just click save, and that will add them into the images folder. Okay, so now we've done that, we just need to jump back over to Dreamweaver. So if we just jump into the code, we want to be adding our code inside of here, so inside of the search box. So if we just create some space, we're going to create another div, and we're going to call this, give it an ID, and we'll call this search content, and just close that off. So if we double click on the search content and copy that, and then just go to the style sheet. So if we come down, and we're going to create another rule, so it's going to be search content, and I'll just create some space so you can see this. So I'm going to say background image, and then we're just going to browse for the image we created earlier. So if we go to images, so what we want the search BG, so the background. So if we just preview that in the index page and go to design, you can now see up here we have the div, but we haven't given it any height yet, so we can't actually see the background properly. So first of all, we need to find out what the height of that is. So if we just go back to Photoshop, so if we just go to the slice tool, but this time we need to select the slice select tool and then double click on the background. So as we can see here, the width is 270 and the height is 48 pixels. So if we just go back to the Photoshop design, we're going to say height is 48 pixels. So if we just preview that on the actual web page, so if we bring this back, now if we hit refresh, you can now see up here in the top right hand corner we have the background, which is looking quite nice, but obviously it's repeating, so we need to sort that out. So again, all we have to do is say background repeat, no repeat, and just save the page. And if we just preview that on the web page itself and hit refresh, you can now see that's disappeared. So we're getting quite close now. The next thing we need to do, we need to add the actual search box on the inside. So if we just close this down and go back to the index page and then go to the code. So inside of here, well in fact first of all we need to add our closing comment here. So search content. So we need to create some space in between. So the code we're going to put in here, we're going to type in input, and then it's going to ask us for the type. So we'll type in type, and it's going to be search in there. And then we're going to give this a class so we can target it with CSS, and we're going to call this search field. And then we're just going to close that off. So if we just preview this in the web page, so if we just refresh, you can now see it's added this little thin search box. So if we click on it, you can now see we can type in there. So we've sorted that portion out, but obviously that doesn't look like anything like the Photoshop design, so we need to style this field. So the way we're going to target this, we have to say the following. So any ID that is called search content that has an input with a class of search field, do the following. So if we add this in here, so any ID with search content that has an input with a class, now classes start with dots, of search field, do the following. So we're going to say margin. So we're going to say on the top, give it 7 pixels. On the right, give it 0 pixels. On the bottom, 0. And on the left, give it 12 pixels. So if we just preview that in the web page, and then we hit refresh, you can now see that's jumped down, actually inside of the box now. So if we just go back to Dreamweaver, the next thing we need to do, we need to give it a width because it's not quite long enough. So width, we're going to say 200 pixels. And we need to give it a height, so we're going to say height of 30 pixels. So if we now preview this in the web page and we hit refresh, you can now see that's sitting nicely inside of the box. The next thing we need to do is just add on the button here on the right hand side. So the code that we need to add for the button is going to be similar to the search field where we added. So it's going to be input, and again it's going to be type, but this time we're going to select the button, and we're going to give this a class also so we can target it with CSS, and this is going to be called search button, and then we're going to close that off. So if we just look at that in the design view, you can now see it's added this tiny little button here, but because it's so thin we haven't given it width and height. So if we just go back over to the style sheet, so the CSS for this we need to create the following. So it's going to be search content that has an input with a class of search button. So we need to create the following styles. So the width is going to be 39 pixels, and the height is also going to be 32 pixels. So if we just preview that in the design view, so you can now see we've got a button up here of 32 and 39 for the width and the height. So if we just go back to the style sheet, obviously we don't want this button to look like that. We want it to look like the graphic we cut out in Photoshop. So we're going to say background image, and then we're just going to browse to that image we created, so the go button here. So we've added that in. So we need to tell it to not repeat the background image because obviously we don't want that. So background repeat, no repeat. If I could spell repeat. So if we just preview that in the web page, so if we hit refresh, you can now see we've got the go button up here, but it doesn't quite look right because we've got this sort of border around it and it's not in position. But if we click on it, you can actually see it does do something. It's an actual button. So what we need to do, if we go back to Dreamweaver, oh, I've just noticed that. So no repeat. So the next thing we need to add is we need to get rid of that border. So we're going to say border 0 pixels. So if we just preview that now, you can now see that border has disappeared. So we're getting there now. So if we go back to Dreamweaver, the next thing we need to do, we need to say background color. And we're going to say transparent. And if we go back to the design, you can see what takes shape now. So I've hit refresh. You can now see it's got rid of that background on the button, not the image, on the button. And now if we go to Dreamweaver again, the final thing we need to do is just move the image down. So we're going to use margin top, and we're going to say move it down from the top 6 pixels. So if we just go back to the design now and we hit refresh, you can now see that slid down into position. What we could do, we could actually tell the search box to move along, so it pushes the button further this way. So if we just go back to Dreamweaver, and if we go to the field and we say change the width, say 210, and then preview that, and there you go, it's now moved that along and it's starting to take shape. So we've added that in now. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to leave the video here. I do want to start creating more Photoshop tutorials, but I don't actually know what you want me to create. Now, I will be creating a web design layout series, so I'm not going to do that just yet because I've got these other 2 series on the go. But anything else related to Dreamweaver, how to create nice looking text, for example, how to manipulate images, all that sort of thing, let me know in the comments below, and I'll catch you in the next video.